Hello there, it's Friday the 8th of September. Welcome to your ASCL end of week briefing and greetings from what feels like the Suffolk Riviera. Three things, predictably and very predictably. RAC is one of those things, something we didn't talk a lot about publicly, but we're now talking about little else publicly. Let's just reflect on where we might be with that. Then I just want to talk about a special day this past Wednesday when we had our presidential handover and how it exemplified so much of work we've been trying to do around equalities and diversity and inclusion. You'll see more of that in a second. And then just a reference to our data conferences coming up. And then courtesy of Andy, a head teacher, we've got a kind of frontline funny on a topical issue. More of that in a second. RAC. This has been a week of anxiety for pretty much all of our members in lots of parts of the UK, in all kinds of institutions, hasn't it? The anxiety, the workload generated by this, the trying to give reassurance to young people and to parents, and then the frustration that you, the very people on the ground trying to do all of that, are being accused of being the problem rather than the solution, frankly. Get off your backsides, you're being told. You'll see us talking about that in the media. We've got a clip which we have linked to in the email version, but more importantly, in a way, with my colleague, Paul Whiteman, General Secretary of the National Association of Head Teachers. We wrote a letter to Gillian Keegan, the Secretary of State, asking that she retracts that comment, that accusation about you and the hint that it is to do with people not being prepared to put the work in. How dare we get comments like that? What we've seen is just how much you have been trying to do, and we pay tribute. If we want to see real leadership, we look to you. You've done extraordinary work, and I know it's not finished yet. So a couple of things about today. We now know that the threat at the beginning of the week that the list was going to be published today of those institutions which have not returned that survey, that list is now not going to be published. There was then talk that the percentage of schools which haven't filled it in was going to be published, even if the names weren't. We're told that's not going to happen. And we've also had a statement which talks about reasonable costs will be reimbursed. There's been weasel words around that all the time. We've had some clarification on that today. You'll see the link in the email version. Have to say, as a veteran English teacher, I think the word reasonable in the sentence, reasonable costs will be reimbursed. I think the word reasonable is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting there, but have a look at that in the email version of that. And if you've got things you want to tell us about your RAC experience, tell us at ascl.org.uk. And similarly, if you want to tell us about your experience not to do with RAC, how has the beginning of term been? Have you managed to create a sense of normality? What does attendance look like? How does behaviour of young people feel? Anything you want to tell us, as you know, we always use those very granular insights you're able to provide. If you've got time or inclination, just want to tell us things, tell us at ascl.org.uk. That's the first thing. Secondly, take a look at this. There's our new presidential trio. Immediate past president Evelyn Ford, our new president John Camp, and Manny Botway, who joins as the vice president. It exemplifies the commitment we've had to an education system whereby the teachers, the support staff, the leaders reflect the kind of diversity in the society we live. And part of that diversity is about the different parts of the education sector. And we're so proud that as our new president, for the first time, what you've got in John Camp there is somebody who is a trust leader. He's a trust leader of primary and special schools. And in particular, those young people in special schools can too often feel like they're on the margins of policy around education. Not this year, they're not going to be. It's going to be absolutely centre stage, and we're absolutely delighted that John becomes your new president. You'll see more about him in a terrific video we've got showcasing him and his school next week. And then finally, let's just say something about our data conferences. I'm an English teacher by background. My eyes glaze over a bit at the thought of data, but I was always very taken with that thing that Dylan William said, you know, the guru of assessment. He said that data is not important in itself. It is simply a tin opener. It opens up issues for you. It gives you questions and it can provide solutions. And our two data conferences, one of them in Manchester, one of them in London, go to the nearest one of those, and what you will find from Tiff Harris, from Tom Middlehurst and the rest of the team there, this really isn't about numbers. It is about how data can unlock learning, unlock assessment, unlock a sense of how we help children to achieve better. We link to that in today's email version. So finally, Andy, that head teacher who sent us a topical Friday funny, he said, You might have heard this because I used it on Radio 4 actually when I was on the Today programme this week. It caught my eye. Andy says, please excuse the history teacher in me, but at a rate of rebuilding England's 22,000 schools at 50 a year, as boasted about by the Prime Minister, well, those built in 1583, 5 years before the Spanish Armada, would just be coming round for a refit. Mind you, says Andy, ironically, those built around the first Elizabethan era are probably in better nick than those built since 1950. Is the government's view that rebuilding schools sometime over the next 440 years, that would be an effing job well done? Watch the language there, Andy. Thanks so much for staying in touch with us. Thanks so much for supporting us. But most important, thanks for what you're doing in communities in what has been a fraught week to try and give a sense of reassurance and a sense that business can be as usual as it can be at this very, very strange time. As always, if you need us, hotline team are here for you. If you want to tell us things, you know how to do that. Stay cool this weekend. We'll regroup with you next Tuesday.